the school, but I guess behind the scene we're getting busy preparing for next year for the students who will be here in just a few weeks. For sure, for those who were there last night, you were able to see the plans for our expansion building. It was a big part of our evening last night, and for those who could not make it, the website for the Engineering Leaders Camping will be updated, and you'll be able to watch this great clip that has been prepared. It's a fly-through of the expansion that we are planning. The Women in Engineering Breakfast is it's the 19th edition of the Women in Engineering Breakfast, so I'm really impressed by that, and I'm also very proud that we're doing this. We have quite a few initiatives that are based in the Faculty of Engineering. The Women's Advancement Office is based out of our faculty. It looks at how we can attract and retain female faculty members, female students, PhD, master's degree students. The office works closely with the Student Organization of Women in Science and Engineering, or WISE. The Schulich School of Engineering is also home to Cyber Mentor, an online mentorship program for young women ages 11 to 18. And we also run a summer camp, which is called Minds in Motion. And we have a few girls-only camps during the summer of Minds in Motion. So we really take this investment in women in engineering very seriously. At the school level, at the undergraduate level, 23% of our students are women, and at the graduate level, it's 24%. And when you look at the national average in Canada, at the undergraduate level, it's 17%. So really, we are really proud of that accomplishment to be able to say that 1/4 of our students are women. But I think we've done quite a bit of progress over the past 20 years, but there is still a lot of work to do. As you can see, this number of 23% should probably be more around 50 or 55%. Today we are joined by Ms. Dinah Drysdale, who has come all the way from New York to talk to us this morning, so thank you so much for taking this time for us. Ms. Drysdale is the Vice President Renewables at Public Service Enterprise Group, PSEG, Energy Holdings. This is a company in New Jersey. She's working in New Jersey and has been with the company since 2008, working in the areas of strategic growth and operations. Ms. Drysdale was also named the president of PSEG Solar Source in September 2011 and is the vice president of PSEG Resources, in which she manages a real estate portfolio of more than 7.5 million square feet. Before moving to the United States, Ms. Drysdale worked with ENMAX Corporation in Calgary for 7 years as Vice President of Strategy and Risk Management. Ms. Drysdale also worked for TransAlta Corporation in Calgary for 7 years prior to this. She also told me that she worked in fashion for a few years, and it's not here, so hopefully she's going to be able to tell us when it is that she went into fashion, and maybe why it is that she came back to engineering. Ms. Drysdale has an MSc from the University of Calgary and an MBA from Queen's School of Business, and has served on several boards in the US and in Canada. With her vast experience throughout North America, Dinah truly has a global engineering perspective, and I have no doubt that her remarks this morning will contribute to all of us gaining a better understanding of and appreciation of some of the challenges faced by women in our industry. Welcome, Dinah.
Hello, it's nice to be back in Calgary. So the first thing that I noticed was I haven't flown Air Canada in 10 years. It's clean, people are polite, the movies are free, the flight attendants smile. I couldn't believe it. I was like, what's funny? Like, why is she looking at me? And she was really, really friendly. And my favorite part was the captain got on and he said, "Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, there's going to be some turbulence, please." And I'm like, oh God, what's going to happen? And so the plane starts going like this. I'm like, what? And then he did it again and again and again. And I'm thinking, oh, this is like It's true. You're very polite. Canadians are incredibly polite, and contrary to popular belief, Americans love Canadians. And contrary to what a lot of our beliefs are, although they are kind of obnoxious sometimes, they're just regular people like the rest of us. And the thing that got me to be really comfortable in that culture was they love, love, love dogs. These are dog people, so how can they be that bad, right? And everywhere you go, there's dogs, and everybody's got dogs, and everybody's very tolerant of them. So there are definitely differences between the two countries. I've spent, now it's getting close to the majority of my career over there. And so coming back here, the other thing I noticed is how quiet and how clean everything is. So our headquarters is in Newark, and I overlook the World Trade Center. And so every day I get a lot of time to think as I watch World Trade Center go back up. And it was called the Freedom Tower for a while. It's now the World Trade Center, obviously. And really kind of take the whole environment as normal. So when I got here and I got off the plane, I looked around and it was so quiet. And everybody was so orderly and it was so clean. And I was like, oh my God, do I talk? And I forgot this used to be home and I knew what it was like, right? But Canadians are definitely have different sense of humor too. So the Americans still don't get me. And they'll make jokes and they'll look at me and just jokes that Canadians will have with our sort of, maybe it's Brit kind of origin in our sense of humor, we can be rather sarcastic. And I've said things where they take it seriously. And I remember someone saying something about my son, and I said, well, he's a great kid. If, you know, he'd be perfect if it wasn't for the smell. And they look at me, of course Canadians laugh, right? They get it. And one woman said, you know, they have deodorants for kids now. And so I continually deal with this, and I continually am always trying to, okay, I'm joking, I'll have to say that, I'm joking. So when I started to think about what it was I wanted to talk to everybody here about, I was just speaking at Columbia. Start off, I never wanted to ever speak at women in engineering type things because I was always about not focusing as much on diversity, yet I'm continually being asked to speak at these, whether it's a lot in New York, a lot all over the place, and diversity in general. I had to speak at the gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgendered group recently because they couldn't find a diversity champion. And I'm a straight ally, so that was fine. And I spoke at the Society of Hispanic Engineers last Christmas, and trust me, I don't even know any Spanish. But there's a shortage of diversity in this industry, and there's a shortage of people that can speak from a position of being a diversity person. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that experience, and a little bit focusing particularly on women. When I talked at Columbia, there were several hundred, mostly students. So I focused the talk on how they can get ahead in their career and what it is that they can do. And I look around the room and we've got a splattering of both, but I'm still going to focus that way because I think all of us are here because we understand that we're missing out on tapping half of the workforce, right? It's not just a tragedy for women if they're missing out on this amazing career area, but it is a tragedy for our industry if we're missing out on getting women involved in the field. And I think everybody can agree to that. So one of the things that I want to put in context, before I go on, yes, I did work in fashion for 2 years. When I went to the U.S., I went to work for Northeast Utilities, which is also a large publicly traded electric utility. PSEG is a $16 billion publicly traded electric utility. NU is a little smaller. We were in the Connecticut area. And I had done a couple of years there unraveling the mess they made of their trading book. It was catastrophic. They were over $400 million negative mark to market. But in true Canadian fashion, I went in and just fixed everything, right? And so I found myself in a position where I didn't really have anything really challenging looking ahead for me. And I'm also a graduate of the Harvard Business School, and I had a lot of colleagues from Harvard. And one of them gave me a call and said, hey, why don't you come over and work for Limited Brands? We know you have a really strong background in risk management, and I mean, it's a business is a business is a business. Why don't you come over and work for them? So Limited Brands, as many of you may know, it's also about a $15 billion integrated company. They own Henry Bendel, which is a very high-end couture retailer in Manhattan. They have one in Columbus, Ohio, too. We won't even go there. I did live there while I was working for Limited Brands. It was a very dark period of my life. But they also own Victoria's Secret. Many of you are familiar with Victoria's Secret and the Limited. And they owned a lot of lines that they've since sold. So I spent 2 years there and couldn't wait to get back to energy. And the recruiter who brought me over to PSEG said when she brought my resume to the president of the group at the time, and he had his glasses on, he's looking down, and he looked up over his glasses and he goes, "Victoria's Secret? Are you kidding me?" And she said, no, it was just a momentary lapse, trust me. And so I came back into PSEG, which at the time had, as I said earlier, they have about $16 billion in, or $16 billion market cap, and about 15 gigawatts of generation, mostly in the New England, New York, New Jersey area, primarily nuclear. We do have some coal and combined cycle gas, and we had about $5 billion worth of international assets in the power and electric utilities sector all over the world, everywhere from Venezuela to Poland. And like a lot of the utilities in the U.S., we suffered some losses, and of course everyone went, oh my God, we got to get out of here, instead of looking at it from portfolio. So when I came in, it was all about repatriating those assets and investing them into a renewables business and trying to hit the same hurdle rates that we hit on our unregulated fossil plants, which I won't even go to how hard that is in a renewable sector business, but we've done it. I just got approval for my 5th utility scale plant that's going under construction right now. At the same time as we had the $5 billion in these international assets, we had $5 billion in commercial real estate, and we invested in that real estate in order, as a publicly traded company, we couldn't suffer the loss dilution when we were building all the big power plants, because you're deploying capital and you're paying for that capital, but you don't have any returns when they're not in rate base. These are all market, merchant-based businesses. So we invested in leverage lease investments to the tune of about $5 billion, and now I've inherited that 20 years later, and it's just a rat's nest. Any of you have been to Denver, have seen the Quest Tower? That was one of my assets. I sold that last year to Brookfield. And of course, when I went in to get the approval, they said, "That's a Canadian company, isn't it?" And I go, "It's my Uncle Bob." And those of you who know Brookfield, it's this massive, massive, multi-mega conglomerate, right, with some pretty amazing people. So anyway, that's kind of the professional context. So you can see that I haven't gone in and gotten a bunch of little token promotions. I've worked hard and I've delivered all the time, and I'll talk to that a little bit. Now, in terms of my context as a woman, it's kind of apparent. I'm in that camp, I hope. That was a joke. Come on, you guys are Canadians, don't disappoint me. But I've always kind of, when I first went into engineering, and this was back in the 80s, no role models. I really didn't know what in the heck engineers did. Really, I didn't. And my parents, my mother didn't even have a high school education. I was one of 10 kids. We were dirt poor. And so I just thought this, because I loved physics and I loved math and I loved science, that this was where I was going to go. So I did some work in the computer science field before, and chemistry before I settled on engineering, and it was here at the University of Calgary. Now, in true fashion, I didn't want to make anything easy for myself, so I got married when I was barely out of my teens, and I got pregnant in first year. And then, just to top it all up, my husband and I split up. So here I was in first year as a single mother with a baby. First pregnant student in this university school, and then there were a few after me. It was like a disease. But it was really challenging because my family was in Manitoba, and I wasn't going to tell them I needed help. Like, I've always been stubborn, and I've always been there. I was never going to tell them I needed help. So I worked. I worked every job I could get my hands on, and I sewed and designed wedding gowns in my basement. And that's how I kind of got into fashion and clothes. And I pretty much taught myself, it's engineering, right? It's just constructing stuff, right? And so I worked at whatever I could. The faculty here was really, really encouraging, but I know some of the professors were disappointed. In my first year, for example, I don't know if any of you remember Bud Streets, but he used to make me get up in front of the class because I would get 100% in his computer science class. I could write code in 15 minutes. It just came very easily to me. And he used to make jokes, and it was, if you remember Bud, he was a great guy. He was a wonderful man. And so once I had the baby and I had all these jobs, it was a little harder to balance everything, and everybody thought I would just drop out of school. But obviously I didn't drop out of school. I kept going. I made it through. My son is demented, having been raised by engineers, but that's another story. He's in grad school in Vancouver now. But I tell you this because I want you to know that I am familiar with the challenges that working mothers face. In Canada, it's a little better because we have a great daycare center and we get a year, well, at that time, 6 months of maternity leave. Canada's all about keeping women working. One of the big shockers for me when I went down there was how many women had advanced degrees from Harvard and they're all staying home. There's no childcare. They don't, at 6 weeks, try going back to work with a baby. Our council at work is facing that again. It's hard. And so what you end up with is, if you're not ready to go back and you don't have any great options for childcare, they stay home and they end up, you know, kind of, it's a big loss to the women and it's a big loss to society. So I heard Guy mention the numbers. We're getting up in the numbers. Some of the schools in the U.S. are boasting 40% female enrollment. And I remember when I graduated in '91, less than 1 in 10 licensed professional engineers was a woman. And I remember reading back to 1970, less than 1 in 10 licensed professional engineers was a woman. And guess what? 2012, less than 1 in 10 licensed working professional engineers is a woman. I am almost always the only woman engineer, and in the U.S. even, I think I still have yet to meet another woman engineer who's running an operating company. Most of them are off in HR or off in communications or off somewhere else. And so I've thought about that and thought about it a lot. Why is that? Why do they go in and why do they leave? And I've always kind of struggled with these things. Even when I was a little kid, I was that kid that was always, yeah, but girls can do it too. And my dad would be, but he, you know, I own and ride a motorcycle. My dad taught me that there were no limits to what I could do. I could do what I wanted to do. And yet I continued to see women, you know, even from that early age, being kind of channeled in these ways. So we did all this great work in the last 20 years getting to these elementary school kids, because we thought that was going to be the magic bullet, right? Let's get these girls interested in engineering, let's get them in. But they're graduating and they're not staying. They're leaving. And I really struggled again with why is that happening? And I started to see a lot of signs that there was a lot of sort of bipartisan kind of two groups of people and two groups of ways that women dealt with the issues that were facing women. And I'm going to draw us back to a really dark memory I have from 1987 when I was here. I was in my 3rd year at the time. And we all remember that great tragedy with the École Polytech when we lost 12 women engineers. And a couple of years later, I became friends with one of the survivors. And we've talked a lot about what happened that day. And I remember being so incredibly, obviously the country was saddened, the world was saddened, all of us were saddened. But the thing that really, can I say a swear word, pissed me off was how many people said, this has nothing to do with them being women, this is just some crazy guy. And I'm scratching my head and I'm going, okay, we make 60 cents on the dollar, and we still do pretty much, and I'll tell you how to make that go away because I make more than all the guys I work with. We make 60 cents on the dollar. We still come out of school and we work in these marginalized roles. We're still, at that time, and I haven't checked the statistics lately, but at that time, the leading cause of death for women, and this was at the time when they said this wasn't women, wasn't young women, wasn't cancer, it wasn't car accidents, it was being beaten to death by the man who promised to love her, whether it was a boyfriend or a husband or an ex-husband. And I'm sure that statistic is still there, young, healthy women. That's the cause. So this is an issue. These women's issues are issues. So I'm sitting there and I'm looking at these other women and I'm thinking, you know, she can do physics, she can do math. She's seeing the same things I'm seeing. Why isn't she believing this? And it became clear there were kind of two camps. There was this camp of people that denied the statistics and just said, look, if I keep my head down and I just kind of do my job and I just kind of don't pay attention to what's really going on, then I'm going to be fine. And they deny it, and they deny it, deny it. Then there's the other group, the other camp, I call them the enlightened, the ones that look at the data and they say, there's issues here. There's real problems here. The statistics don't lie. Well, lies, damn lies, right? And then there's statistics. But if you look at them properly, they don't lie. And so and then there's sub-camps in the enlightens, right? But back when I graduated, there was a lot of really negative energy directed towards these women, these crazy feminists, these crazy, you know, what is it they're trying to accomplish here, blah, blah, blah. And I mean, in the United States right now, there's a really huge backlash. You don't have to look too far into some of what's now frontline Republican Party candidates, and you see some really, really angry old school views towards women. And so I don't say this to say to you, and I'll tell you why I don't say this to say to you that you're doomed or that, you know, there's a big issue here, because there is an issue. But I say this to you because for any of us, we're engineers, right? We know to solve a problem, right, you have to understand it. And to understand a problem, you have to acknowledge it. You can't stick your head in the sand and pretend that it's not an issue. You have to acknowledge it, and you have to understand it. So I tell people to pay attention as they're getting ahead to the people that have helped them get there, right? And because you want to model your behavior after those people. But I also tell them to pay attention to the people that aren't. They're getting in your way, and listen to them and think about them, because you need to understand what it is they're doing, because not only will it help you to get ahead, but it is our obligation to make sure that we get those things taken care of so that we can open up the doors for other women. So again, as you network and you get out there, it's critical to be paying attention to both sides of it. I don't know if I've angered people with this position. I think things have changed in 20 years. If I talked like this back then, there'd be a lot of anger, because there seems to be this view that I'm saying, oh, those evil men. And it's not those evil men. It's the people that have helped me get ahead in my career have been men. It's just, I'm telling you, the workplace is a nasty place sometimes. It's a hard place, and everybody is going to have something that they're going to be at a disadvantage because of, whether it is, who you hang out with, what sports you play, what school you went to in the U.S. is really important, your gender, your ethnicity, your color, whatever. You have to understand what it is, and know for us there's challenges based on perceptions of women. So I think about that, and I tried to get my head around, so what is this magic thing that happens to us, that we graduate and we get through that and then we don't work? And I'm going to share with you a story, and I have lots of them, but this one's an interesting one. This was back in 1991, so I'm not talking about back in the 50s or the 60s, although I do have a colleague, a female engineer, I just realized was an engineer the other day, who graduated in the 60s, and she had some interesting stories, even better than mine. I graduated in 1991. We were in another recession. It was the first Gulf War. Those of you in the oil patch know it was tough to get a job. 17 of us were hired by a big utility company, and I remember getting teased endlessly about retiring, because I wasn't going into the oil patch, I was going into the utility sector. But I knew we were going to deregulate that sector, and I knew that we were going to be dealing with renewable energy opportunities, so I knew it would be a good place for me, so I went anyway. And one of the things that we had to do, which was great, was get out and do this, I think it was 2 weeks or 1 week training program, where we went out into the field with the power linemen, and we climbed poles, and we did live line work, did bucket aerial rescue. It was just great fun, especially for me, whose daddy had her on a motorcycle and all the crazy stuff, so I wasn't scared, and a lot of the guys were scared, which always makes me feel, just great. One of my favorite things down in the U.S. is when I jump off my bike and pull off my helmet and shake out my hair. And the last bike I had was a big, heavy, it was like 500-pound bike. And people stop outside in Starbucks because there's still not a lot of female riders. But it's kind of this thing for me to always be out there doing these fun and interesting things. But we got into a room, and there were a lot of staffers, a lot of power linemen, a lot of training guys around, I can't remember the number, and the 17 engineers, and I was sitting sort of in the middle near the back, and we were watching a training video. And this was back in the late 80s, early 90s, where the fear tactics thing was the big thing. You scare people and they will stop doing bad things, and we all know how effective that is with the gross lungs on the cigarette packs, right? They're all still smoking. But the video is graphic. It was talking about burns and talking about electrocution, and they had it was a little, for people that have weak stomach, it was weak. They had real people. They showed burned, severed limbs. It was horrible, and they're building to this. And they said, the risks get worse as the electric system gets more complex, and then blah, 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 they're going on and on. But the risks have changed for a lot of reasons, and we have new risks now. You may have to change screen, work with a woman. It gets better. There's a woman in a bikini with a hard hat on, a tool belt, climbing gaffs, work boots, anyone for a little resuscitation practice. It happened. That's what she said. And I sat there, And I looked around me, and all the chairs were getting bigger. And bigger and bigger and bigger, and the men were getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I was getting, they were like New Jersey state troopers. These were big monster men. And if any of you have seen those state, I don't know how they breed them so big. They're huge. They're these massive heads. It's very, very scary of getting pulled over. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I was getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And my chair was getting little, and it was shrinking down, just like they tell us as women, get small, be a size 2, disappear, get out of the way. It's important for us to be really small, right? And I'm sitting on my little doll chair looking around, and my heart's pounding, and I'm thinking, screw this. I'm going to get bigger than all of you. I'm not going to be little. I'm not sitting on this chair. You're not doing this to me anymore. And I was mad because I suddenly realized what it was. They make us disappear, and they try to do it to each other, but as women, we're so conditioned to do it. We get it right from the start. Any of you have little girls who are struggling with them saying, Daddy, am I fat? Or Mommy, am I fat? I mean, we're told there's these sort of roles and there's these sort of things. And so I thought, I'm going to get up on this damn chair and I'm going to be big and loud, right? I'm going to make it happen. Now, there's ways to do that, right? So when I talk to the kids at Columbia, they all like, okay, how do we do this? What do we do? What do we do? And concrete, kind of instructions are useful for engineers, right? We like that stuff. Just never forget, it's an amazing profession. It was my ticket to credibility. And I tell girls, go out and get your PE, Eng in Canada. Don't sit back and let that opportunity go past you because it matters. This is a great career and it opens a lot of doors. Hell, fashion. Whatever you want to do, because engineers know how to fix stuff. Engineers know how to build stuff. Engineers know how to solve problems. Engineers are at the heart of every single major technological advance we've ever made on this planet. And of course, we have really big egos. But it's a place where you should be. And I said it earlier, the world is getting ripped off. The world is getting ripped off when all we have is half of the population up at the table. Engineering is getting ripped off. Think, and this one drives me nuts, think of all of those great innovations and great inventions and great breakthroughs that didn't happen because the person who was supposed to do it wasn't there because she didn't have a Y chromosome, right? She needs to get up there and do it. And if you Google women lagging men, you're going to see tons and tons of lists, and a recent Fortune magazine said we lag men in innovation and startups. There hasn't been a woman start a Google or start a Facebook or start any of these. And it's not because we're stupid, it's because we're not there. And we need to get there. So the next thing that I want to say is harken back to all of this information about women. Don't use it as an excuse. Get over it. Okay? It's not an excuse. When I went out to the power plants, the guys there, when I showed I could do the job, I had more respect and more support than any of the men did. They were there. These guys identified with me. I was their sister. I was their daughter. I was their mother. I was someone that they cared about because I came in there and they could see that I was brave. I was doing something that a lot of people weren't doing, and yet they could see I could do the job. I could do the job. So the other thing that women need to know, and men knows it, men know this, most men that get ahead know this. Own your own career. Don't sit around and wait for someone to tell you what to do. Don't sit around and say, HR will tell me, and don't take. Just get out there and own it. Plan out what it is you want to achieve. And I don't care if you're 50 now. You still have a long career ahead of you. God, we aren't going to have any Social Security or what's it called? I can't remember what it's called here. But we have to work. We're going to have to work. And it's fun. It's fulfilling. There's great things we can do. So get out there and figure out what it is you want to do. Where do you want to be in 2 years? Where do you want to be in 5 years? Where do you want to be 10 years? And there's some crazy magic to writing it down. I don't know why, but there's something magical about writing it down and putting specific objectives. I put down every year when I do my goals how much money I want to make that year. And sometimes I put crazy numbers, and I always get there. And I don't know how this happens, but it happens. It's just something about it. Maybe it goes into your subconscious, and then you're constantly working towards it. So get out there, own your own career, plan it, be huge, be big, take it over. Now, what do you do with that? You want to do this. Get into a company and look around, and remember, you got 2 ears, right? You got 2 eyes, you got 1 mouth. When you first get in that door, use them that way, in proportion. Listen and watch. Look at the people who are doing what you want to do, and look high. Look really high, and watch them. Watch how they behave, because in every company it's different. If I'd done the things that worked at Northeast Utilities at Limited Brands, out the door. And believe it or not, Limited Brands was way more conservative. way more conservative. They had pictures of girls, and I swear this is true, in jujube bras, all over the walls, yet you couldn't, it was like very, very conservative company. But that's their product, right? So those had to be on the walls. Very, very conservative. So watch those people. Figure out, watch them and think. And don't stay quiet forever, but don't go in thinking you've got to know something from the beginning. And this is whether it's your first job, your job interview, you got to know something on your job interview, or your next job. But watch the people, then get in with them. And there's an easy way to do that. You look for something in the company that's important right now, and it's such a crappy piece of crap job, nobody wants to do it, and you get in there and you do it. If it gets you close to that power person, if it gets you close to that area you want to be in. When I first worked at TransAlta, there was this big old pile of crappy steel in behind the Keephills units where they had thought they were going to build Keephills 3 and 4, and the Public Utilities Commission hadn't approved it, so it was all lying rusting out in the back. And they knew they were cash-strapped at the time, so we thought, hey, why not just catalog this stuff and sell it? So I was out there physically cataloging that stuff and selling it. I had spiders in my hair and cuts all over me. But it got me to know the plant operators. It got me to know the managers at the plants. And I did a kick-butt job. I didn't leave any T uncrossed, any I undotted. I made sure I did it to perfection, and I never thought of it as a crappy job. I thought of this as a great job. And you do that whether you're waiting a table, whether you're getting a photocopy for the president of the company, or whether you're designing a new plant. You give it everything you have and you get noticed. So it's about getting in there and getting noticed. And do that outside of the business too. So I'm a huge advocate of volunteering, and I've always done it all my life. I helped build Discovery House back when I was 19 years old, physically. Battered women and children. I worked at William Roper Hall Home. When I was 8 months pregnant and a student here working part-time, I received the Canadian Cancer Society Volunteer of the Year Award for work that I did. I spoke to kids at schools all the time I worked. I sat on the board of Bethany Care Society. I sat on the board of the Calgary Telus Convention Center. I have a second child. I tried to do that one, right, and I married someone I was pretty sure would be around, and when I was pregnant with my son, he was diagnosed with an incurable brain disease. So I'm a single parent right away again, right? And so I have had to continually balance my family, my career, and I did my MBA at that time too, but I still found time to do this volunteer work. It's the best paying job you're ever going to have, but it gets you also connected with people. So in the U.S. right now, I'm on my third board there. I sat on the Greater Columbus Sports Authority board. I sit on a board for one of the smaller colleges, but it's a very prominent college, Bloomfield College. It's a minority-based college in the U.S., an old one. And I sit on the board of the GI Go Fund. We get veterans off the street, homeless veterans. And we recently, this is one that really was hard for me. We got a guy off the street, sobered him up and cleaned him up. He thought he just got back from Nam. He was that messed up and had been on the street since he got back. So it's a great calling, right? It's a great place to be. I also get involved physically. I don't just sit on boards. So this is the third year I've been the team captain for the PSEG Power Rangers. We pull a tank, a team of 20 people, and we raise money for the Wounded Warrior Project. So there's 35,000 injured veterans coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan. These are our children. We cannot do to them what we did to the Vietnam vets. So I make sure that I'm there for them, and I write them letters when I hear they're in the hospital. My point is, you have time to do this, and when you get to be where I'm at, I have a voice, right? People know who I am. Poppy Harlow did a news story with me on CNN. People know, so I have some power now, and I can use it to do something good. But interestingly enough, our company, being primarily nuclear, we've got a lot of veterans running those plants, including the president of our power company. Suddenly, I've got credibility and a relationship, more importantly, with him. I have a relationship with all other people. I'm going to be doing some work for President Obama on dealing with helping veterans coming back from the field. So volunteer, get out there, get in and do stuff in your company, and tie the two together. And don't stop learning either. But whatever you do, get out there as well and give back. And again, volunteering or mentoring. Mentoring is just really another, word for a cross relationship. I had dinner last night with one of my first people I ever mentored, and we've stayed friends all these years, and she's doing really, really well. And she was really struggling earlier on in her career. But she says sometimes she'd sit and think, what would Diana do? And I said, you didn't get pregnant, did you? You didn't go do that. You didn't go work for like a lingerie company. Tell me no. But she's done well, and she does try to think of it. And she says the thing she thinks about is getting up. And I've always told her that. Get up on that chair, right? Don't disappear. Go out there and make a difference. Build a career for yourself. But more importantly, remember, as you're building that career, you're building a platform. You're building a platform for engineers. It's not about women. It's not about African American or African. It's not about Muslim. It's not about old. It's not about young. It's about building a world that's better for all of us. And engineers are so pivotal to that. And we are building a platform for the future. And come on, guys, that's what being an engineer, that's what it's all about, right? So, thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions about the business or about the living in the U.S. A lot of people ask me that question. If anybody has any.
There's a microphone in the center of the room.
I think I recognize only one face in here, so it's been a long time. You look the same.
Hi, my name's Andy Ewings. I work for a company called AMEC. One of the things I have to do is spend a lot of time getting engineers, mostly men, to do new stuff. How do you think that we can help these mostly men engineers overcome some of their prejudices and be more open about doing new stuff, and one of which is working with women?
Yeah. First of all, don't give them women in bikinis and climbing gaps, because that one just doesn't work. Pretty much everybody who works for me is a man. Except for, well, even my administrative assistant is a man. He's a two-time decorated war veteran, a handicapped African-American, over 50, but he's the best damn admin I've ever had. So make it fun. What I like to do, the first thing I do when I get in with a new group of people is try to figure out what it is they like to do and what they're good at doing, and I build on that. I hate performance reviews where you make a list of what somebody's good at and you make a list of everything somebody's bad at, and you say, ooh, I'm going to make you better at the bad stuff, because they're not good at something because they don't like it. So you have to find something that resonates with them, so something in common. So me getting to be buddies with these guys at the power plants. I mean, when I first walked in, I remember one of the big guys saying, oh God, I'm not taking her around. Like, it's like, ugh. And so I cracked some joke, and pretty soon he was laughing, and pretty soon we were having a good time. So do something that breaks down the barriers and lets them find something in common and something they like about it. Quiet group. I never know where I'm going.
Okay, so I'm Karen Schmidt. I work for Fluor. I'm head of talent development. So one of the things that I have a 16-year-old daughter. And so my daughter is very good at science, very, very good at math. She's very strong. And so engineering seems like a good fit. But it seems to me that it's almost, you have to be exceptional as a female, for people to think engineering is a good fit. And so our females are starting very young, going, I've got to be exceptional. And so when they're exceptional, they get into university, because it's hard to get into university. You've got to be really good. So you're really good, you get into university, and you've got to continue to be really good, because you've got to get noticed, you've got to get seen, you've got to do all the things that you're talking about. So these women continue to go through, they're really good, they're often, you know, in the top percentiles in their classes, very strong. So then a company like Fluor comes along, and we pride ourselves in hiring the best. So we want to hire those very best students. So we go ahead and we hire the very best that we can get, and we'll hire the very best females that we can get. And so then we bring them into our company, and females, again, have to continue to be the very best that they can be. So now they're from age 12 being the very best that they can be, and it takes a lot of energy and a lot of effort, and you're continuing to be the very best. And so then you get noticed, and then someone wants to take them off and make them something else. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that, do you think, or does anyone in this room think that because females have to be the very best, we limit ourselves already from the pool, and we could perhaps do better by saying, not average, but you don't have to be the very best to get these really good careers. This is what I mean. I don't know where I'm going. So I'm not going to make a fool of myself from all these people, but that's okay. But So I guess I struggle because I think about when we look at high potentials and we pick these females, we pick them not to become engineers, we pick them to become something else, so therefore there's no role models left for engineers because the females have gone. And that's because I think we keep telling them they have to be the very best. Why can't they just be good and be part of the mass? And how do we get that message? Does that make sense?
So when we say the very best, it depends how we're defining it, right? Nobody wants a crappy engineer. Nobody wants somebody who's going to build something that's going to break. Nobody wants something, and so the men that go into engineering, I remember my first, and all you guys have been through, you remember that first class where they say, look to your right, look to your left, one of them isn't going to be here, and it was usually both of them aren't going to be here. Everybody to get through in those classes is pretty very best compared to their peers. The women that go into engineering, because it's a smaller group that feel brave enough and strong enough and good enough to get in, you get this sort of like cream layer. And so I think what's important is, and so they already are that type of behavior, that they're type A's, they're really smart, they're really, and in engineers you're already getting the cream sort of the academic world, or the intelligence pool in schools up there already. So we're missing that sort of middle layer of girls that we want to attract into engineering. And I think a lot of the work that you're doing to reach out to them and get them there is there. But there's, I don't really think there's unique. I hear that all the time. You have to be the very best, the very best, the very best. But I mean, I am further than just, I don't know any of the guys I graduated with who are holding officer positions at Fortune 200 companies in the U.S. I mean, I worked as hard as every guy that's on the executive team with me, and I don't think I worked any harder. I just had different things to deal with. I think the trick is to get more women who are just going to stay in the engineering ranks as opposed to want to be officers in there in the first place. And I still stuff my hands in the engineering all the time. I know everything that's going on in my plants. I know what's going on in the operations side, the design, the development. Obviously, I don't stamp or sign anything anymore. But does that help? A little bit? Well, they have, a lot of times I see that women leave and go somewhere else, and it disappoints me, and it might be because you get that top cream of the crop of women in there into the engineering jobs. They're the ones, like I was, used to winning all the time. And when they don't win, they leave, which isn't right, but the male group has that top, and they leave too if they don't get what they want and go into another industry. But we have more of the, the milk underneath with the male population, the ones that don't want to be officers. They want to be good. They want to be great engineers. We have to get more of those women in, but understand the creme de la creme layer of men, anybody who's worked with those people, they move and go elsewhere too if they can't get what they want. Great. My pleasure.
Thank you so much, Diane, for this very inspiring talk. What a great way of concluding our Breakfast series for this year. This has been what a great way to conclude my first season of Breakfast. And before I conclude, I want to thank so many of you in the room that I've met over the past 8 months, 9 months that I've been here. So many faces and people who have been helping me settle down here, understand the lay of the land. Thank you so much to all of those who have been helping me as I arrived here in Calgary in the new school. Thank you so much. I also want to thank Brandy Churchman, who is sitting in the back. She's been running this breakfast series all year. Thank you so much, Brandy. And on top of it, as you know, she was in charge, as you probably know, she was in charge of the block party last night, which was a big, big event. So thank you, Brandy, for all this work. And I think you deserve a round of applause. I hope you have learned during that breakfast series this year, and we will be sending out a survey soon to all EAP members. It's going to be sent after this meeting, so please give us your feedback so that we can improve this series of breakfasts that we present every year. I hope you will sign up again for next year, and if I don't see you this summer, please have a very, very good summer, and hopefully we'll see each other here in the fall when we start our breakfast series for next year. Thank you so much, and have a nice day.